Picture this. I'm standing in front of 200 wedding guests while my daughter-in-law Victoria holds a microphone, pointing at my Walmart dress and saying, "I just want to thank David's mother, Margaret, for, well, trying her best despite her limited circumstances." I know shopping at Walmart for tonight wasn't easy. The entire room erupted in laughter. People were literally recording me on their phones as this 29-year-old gold digger humiliated me at her own wedding. But here's what none of them knew, including Victoria. I was sitting on a $45 million trust fund, and I was about to destroy her entire world. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button because this story has more twists than a soap opera. And let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 68 years old, a retired teacher, and until that wedding night, everyone thought I was just a poor widow struggling to get by. Little did they know, I had been playing the long game for 2 years, and that humiliation was exactly what I needed to spring the trap that would land Victoria in prison and expose her entire family as the frauds they really were. But let me start from the beginning, because to understand why that moment was so sweet, you need to know how I got there. 2 years ago, when my husband Robert died, I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to hide my wealth and see who in my family truly loved me for who I was, not what I had. You see, my mother came from the Whitmore family. Old money, trust funds, the works. When she passed 5 years ago, I inherited everything, but Robert and I had always lived modestly. We were both teachers. We believed in simple living, and honestly, having that much money felt overwhelming. So we kept it quiet, lived off our pensions, and I figured someday I'd use it for something meaningful. But Robert died. I felt so alone. My son David was my only family left, and I wanted to know, really know, if the people who came into our lives cared about us or just saw dollar signs. So I made a choice that seemed crazy at the time, but turned out to be the smartest thing I ever did. I decided to play poor. I moved from our nice house into a modest apartment. I started shopping at thrift stores and Walmart. I drove my old Honda until it practically fell apart, and I waited to see what kind of person my son would bring home. That's when he met Victoria Sterling. The first time David brought her over for dinner, I knew exactly what she was. She walked into my little apartment, and I watched her eyes scan every corner, cataloging everything she saw. The cheap furniture, the generic brand groceries, the discount store decorations. She smiled and said all the right things, but her eyes were calculating. "So, Margaret," she said, sitting delicately on my second-hand couch, "David tells me you're retired. That must be challenging financially." Even that first night, she was fishing for information about money. But David was so smitten, so completely blinded by her blonde hair and designer clothes. Clothes that I would later discover were purchased with credit cards she couldn't afford to pay off. "Mom gets by just fine," David said, squeezing Victoria's hand. "She's the strongest woman I know." Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. It's just, retirement can be so hard when you haven't been able to save much on a teacher's salary." That's when I knew I was dealing with a gold digger. But David was 30 years old, and he was happy. So I decided to see how far she would go. Over the next 6 months, Victoria's true nature slowly revealed itself. She started making little comments about my lifestyle. "Maybe we could help you redecorate, Mari." "Garrett, I know some places that have sales." Or, "David, your mom really should upgrade her phone. It's embarrassing when we're out together." But the real test came when David told me they were getting engaged. "Mom, I need to ask you something," David said during one of our weekly dinners. We were at a chain restaurant, something Victoria had suggested because, as she put it, "Your mom will be more comfortable somewhere affordable." "Of course, honey. What is it?" "Victoria and I are thinking about getting married." I nearly choked on my water. It had only been 8 months since they'd met, but I kept my expression neutral. "That's wonderful, David. She makes you happy." Victoria beamed, flashing a diamond ring that was clearly beyond David's teacher salary. "We're so excited. And Margaret, I hope you know how much it means to me to have your blessing. You'll always have my support," I said, and I meant it. I would support my son's happiness, but I was also going to support the truth. That's when Victoria dropped the first real bomb. "We're thinking of having the wedding at the Sterling family estate," she said. and I watched David's face carefully. My father has generously offered to pay for everything. After all, we want this to be perfect, and we know how expensive weddings can be. David looked uncomfortable. Victoria, we discussed this. I want to contribute— Oh, sweetie, Victoria interrupted, reaching over to pat his hand condescendingly. Your teacher salary is adorable, but Daddy's already handled everything. Besides, she glanced at me, we wouldn't want to put any financial pressure on your family. The way she said, your family, while looking directly at me, made it clear what she really meant. We're poor, and she was the rich savior swooping in to rescue my son from his humble circumstances. If only she knew. But I played my part perfectly. That's very generous of your family, Victoria. I'm sure it will be beautiful. Oh, it will be. We're flying in flowers from Ecuador, having the reception catered by the same company that did the governor's daughter's wedding. Nothing but the best. David shifted in his seat. Maybe we should scale back a little. Absolutely not, Victoria said firmly. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. We can't compromise on quality just because— She trailed off, but her meaning was clear. Just because your poor mother can't contribute. That night, after I dropped David off at his apartment, I sat in my car and made a decision. I was going to let Victoria plan her perfect wedding, let her show everyone exactly what kind of person she was, and then I was going to reveal the truth in the most devastating way possible. I called my lawyer the next morning. Eleanor, it's Margaret Chen. I need to ask you about accessing my mother's trust. Eleanor Whitmore had been my mother's estate attorney for 30 years. She was the only person who knew about my inheritance besides my accountant. Margaret, you know that money has been sitting there for years. Your mother wanted you to use it. I'm going to. But first, I need you to prepare some documents for me. I have a feeling I'm going to need proof of everything very soon. What kind of proof? I told her about Victoria, about the engagement, about the way my future daughter-in-law was treating me like a charity case while planning a wedding that cost more than most people's houses. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Margaret, are you sure about this approach? Hiding your wealth is one thing, but if you're planning some kind of confrontation— I'm not planning anything, I said. I'm just going to wait and see how far Victoria's greed will take her. Something tells me she's going to hang herself with her own rope. I had no idea how right I was. The wedding planning process revealed Victoria's true character in ways I never could have imagined. It started small. Casual exclu. Science from discussions. Being left out of venue tours. Having my opinions dismissed before I could even voice them. Margaret, we're going to look at wedding venues this weekend, Victoria announced during a family dinner at David's apartment. I know you'd love to come, but these places require deposits that are— well, they're quite substantial. I wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable. David frowned. Mom should come. She has great taste. Victoria's smile was sweet as poison. Of course she does. It's just that these venues require immediate deposits of $15,000 to $20,000 just to hold the date. I'd hate for your mom to feel pressured or out of place. I sat there, knowing I could write a check for 20 times that amount without blinking, and watched my son nod in understanding. Maybe it's better if you two handle the venue selection, David said apologetically. Mom, you understand, right? Of course, honey. You pick whatever makes you happy. Victoria's smile widened. I knew you'd understand. You're so practical. But that was just the beginning. Every single wedding decision became an opportunity for Victoria to remind everyone of my supposed financial limitations. When they picked the florist— these arrangements are $3,000 each, Margaret. I know that's probably shocking, but it's what quality costs. When they chose the photographer— he's $8,000 for the day, but he's shot weddings for celebrities. I'm sure you've never seen work like this. When they selected the band— they're $15,000, but they've played at the Kennedy Center. It's probably not the kind of music you're used to. Each comment was delivered with a smile, as if she was being considerate of my feelings, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. She was enjoying every moment of my supposed humiliation. The breaking point came when Victoria decided I needed help picking out my outfit for the wedding. Margaret, I've made an appointment for you at Nordstrom, she announced. I know it's not where you usually shop, but I want to make sure you have something appropriate for the wedding. David looked grateful. That's really thoughtful, Victoria. Well, I can't have David's mother looking out of place in the photos. What would people think? So there I was, in Nordstrom, with Victoria and her mother, Linda Sterling, being treated like a charity case who needed their fashion guidance. Now, Margaret, Linda said, in a voice dripping with fake kindness, we need to find you something suitable. Nothing too flashy. We don't want you competing with the bride, but something that will photograph well. They led me to the clearance section. These are perfect for someone on a fixed income, Victoria said, holding up a basic navy dress marked down from $200 to $89. It's classic, simple, and the price is very reasonable. I stood there in that department store, watching these women, whose family, I would later discover, was drowning in debt, treat me like I was their pet charity project, and I felt something inside me snap, but I didn't lose my temper. Instead, I smiled and said, you know what? I think I'll find something on my own. I saw some lovely options at Walmart. The look of horror on their faces was almost worth the humiliation. Walmart? Linda gasped. Margaret, you can't wear Walmart to your son's wedding. Why not? It's clean, it fits, and it's what I can afford. Victoria and her mother exchanged a look that said everything about what they really thought of me. Fine, Victoria said, her mask slipping just slightly. If that's what you're comfortable with, then that's what you should wear. That night, I went home and called Eleanor again. I need you to prepare documentation of my entire financial portfolio, I told her. Official bank statements, trust fund verification, investment summaries, everything. Margaret, what are you planning? Justice, I said, and I want it to be legally bulletproof. But that's when everything changed. Because the next week, David called me with the most devastating news yet. Mom, we need to talk. What is it, honey? I asked when David came over, looking more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen him. He sat down heavily on my thrift store couch and couldn't meet my eyes. Mom, this is really hard to say, but Victoria and I have been talking, and we think maybe it would be better if you didn't come to the wedding. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? It's not that we don't want you there, he said quickly, still not looking at me. It's just, this is going to be a very upscale event. Victoria's family has important business associates coming, potential clients for her father's company. The guest list is very curated. Curated, I repeated. The thing is, Mom, Victoria's worked really hard to make sure everything is perfect. The venue, the decorations, even the guest list. It all has to fit together perfectly. And she's worried that having someone there who's obviously struggling might send the wrong message to her father's business contacts. I stared at my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised by myself after his father deployed overseas, the man I'd put through college by working double shifts, and felt my heart break into 1,000 pieces. You're uninviting me from your wedding because I'm an embarrassment. No, Mom, that's not... He finally looked at me, and I could see the guilt in his eyes. Look, we'll take lots of pictures. We'll have a small celebration just for family afterward. It's not about you being an embarrassment. It's about Victoria's family and their expectations. Their expectations, I said slowly. And what about your expectations, David? What about what you expect from your family? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said the words that changed everything between us forever. Mom, you have to understand. Victoria's family is giving us this incredible start to our marriage. Her father's offered me a job at his company that pays 3 times what I make teaching. They're buying us a house as a wedding gift. I can't mess this up because of pride. Pride, I whispered. You know what I mean. You've always been proud, always insisted on being independent. But sometimes you have to accept help. Sometimes you have to recognize when other people are in a better position to provide for family. I looked at my son, this man who had just told me that his new family's money was more important than the woman who had sacrificed everything to raise him, and I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. You know what, David? You're absolutely right. He looked surprised. I am? Yes. Victoria's family is in a much better position to provide for you, and you should definitely prioritize the people who can give you the most financial benefit. Mom, I didn't mean it like that. No, I understand completely. And you know what? I think I should come to the wedding after all. But I just said, I know what you said, but I've been thinking, and I realize I have something to contribute to this marriage too. Something Victoria and her family should know about before they fully commit to supporting you. David looked confused. What do you mean? I smiled, and for the first time in months, it was completely genuine. Let's just say I think Victoria deserves to know exactly what kind of family she's marrying into. The whole truth. Mom, what are you talking about? Don't worry about it, honey. Just make sure I have a seat at the wedding, preferably somewhere everyone can see me. I want to make sure I'm visible when I give my speech. Your speech? Oh, yes. I have quite a lot to say to your new family, especially about financial expectations. David left that night looking confused and worried, and I immediately called Eleanor. I need you to hire a private investigator, I told her. I want to know everything about the Sterling family, their finances, their business dealings, their debts, everything. Margaret, what are you planning? Victoria wants to make sure everyone knows about family financial status, I said. I'm going to make sure she gets exactly what she asked for. The investigation results came back 2 weeks later, and what I learned made everything even more perfect than I could have imagined. The private investigator's report was like Christmas morning, and my birthday rolled into one devastating package. Mrs. Chen, he said, sitting across from me in Eleanor's law office, I have to say, in 20 years of investigation work, I've never seen a family quite like the Sterlings. Eleanor spread the documents across her mahogany desk, bank statements, credit reports, court filings, business records, a complete financial autopsy of Victoria's family. James Sterling's company is 3 months away from bankruptcy, the investigator continued. They owe $2.3 million to various creditors. The family estate where the wedding is being held, it's been mortgaged to the hilt. They're currently 6 months behind on payments. I leaned forward, studying the papers. What about Victoria herself? She has $47,000 in credit card debt across 8 different cards. Her car is being repossessed next month. The designer clothes, the jewelry, the lifestyle, it's all borrowed money. Eleanor whistled softly. So, when she's talking about her family's wealth, she's talking about debt. I finished. They're broke. Worse than broke, the investigator said. James Sterling has been running what amounts to a Ponzi scheme through his business. He's been using new investor money to pay off old debts. The FBI is already investigating, though they haven't filed charges yet. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Victoria wasn't just a gold digger. She was a desperate gold digger whose family needed my son's stability more than he needed their supposed wowers. Elf, there's more, the investigator said, sliding another folder across the desk. Victoria's been having an affair with the wedding planner, Marcus Rivera. They've been meeting at hotels twice a week for the past 3 months. I have photos, credit card receipts, text messages. The pieces were falling into place beautifully. Victoria was not only using my son for financial security, but she was cheating on him while planning their wedding. What about the job offer James made to David? I asked. Pure fiction. The company won't exist in 6 months. Even if it did, they couldn't afford to pay David his teaching salary, let alone triple it. I looked at Eleanor, who was shaking her head in amazement. Margaret, this is incredible. You have enough evidence here to destroy their entire scheme. Good, I said, standing up and gathering the papers, because I have exactly the platform to do it. What are you thinking? I smiled, and I could feel the satisfaction building in my chest. Victoria wants to make speeches about family financial situations at the wedding. I think that's a wonderful idea. I think everyone there should know exactly what kind of financial situation they're all celebrating. Eleanor looked worried. Margaret, you need to be careful. If you're planning to expose them publicly... I'm not planning to expose them, I said. I'm planning to let them expose themselves. All I'm going to do is tell the truth about my own financial situation. If that happens to make their lies obvious, well, that's just good timing. That night, I called David. Honey, I've been doing some thinking about the wedding speech I mentioned. Mom, maybe you shouldn't... No, I think it's important. Victoria's family has been so generous, so welcoming. I think everyone should know what it means to me to be connected to such a financially stable family. Okay, David sounded uncertain. I've been talking to some people about financial planning, getting advice about my future. I want to share some of what I've learned with the wedding guests. You know, about the importance of honesty in family relationships, especially when it comes to money. That sounds fine, Mom. Wonderful. Oh, and David? Make sure Victoria knows I'll be wearing my Walmart dress. I want her to be prepared for how I'll look in the photos. Mom, it's fine, honey. I want everyone to see exactly who I am. No pretenses, no hiding, just the truth. I hung up the phone and looked at the trust fund documents Eleanor had prepared. $45 million. My mother's legacy, sitting in investments and earning compound interest for 5 years since her death. Tomorrow, Victoria would learn what real money looked like. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather and absolute chaos behind the scenes. As I walked into the Sterling estate, which I now knew was about to be foreclosed on, I could see the desperation hidden behind the expensive facade. The flowers were beautiful, but I noticed they were day-old arrangements from a hotel wedding the night before. The world-class catering was actually from a mid-range company with elegant presentation. Even the string quartet was a group of music students earning extra money, not the professional ensemble Victoria had bragged about. Everything was smoke and mirrors, designed to create an impression of wealth that didn't exist. I took my seat in the back row, wearing my $30 Walmart dress and a genuine smile. Several of Victoria's relatives glanced at me with poorly concealed disdain, whispering to each other about David's poor mother. If they only knew. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll give them that. David looked handsome in his rented tuxedo, and Victoria was stunning in her dress, which I later learned was borrowed from a bridal hop in exchange for social media promotion. But it was during the reception that the real show began. Victoria had insisted on making a speech to thank everyone who made this magical day possible. She stood up at the head table, microphone in hand, looking radiant and confident. I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate this perfect day, she began, her voice carrying clearly across the reception hall. David and I are so grateful to be surrounded by family and friends who love and support us. The crowd applauded politely. I especially want to thank my parents for their incredible generosity in making this celebration possible. As everyone knows, my father's business has been so successful, and we're grateful that we can share that success with family. More applause. I noticed several of the business associates nodding approvingly. Then Victoria's eyes found me in the back of the room. I also want to acknowledge David's mother, Margaret, for joining us tonight. She paused, and I could see the calculated cruelty in her smile. I know this isn't the kind of event Margaret is used to attending. I just want to say how much it means to me that she made such an effort tonight. She gestured toward me, and I felt every eye in the room turn to look at my discount store dress and costume jewelry. I just want everyone to know that Margaret did her absolute best with what she had available. I know shopping at Walmart for tonight wasn't easy, and I want her to know that we don't judge people by their financial circumstances. The room fell silent. A few people coughed uncomfortably. Others were clearly trying not to laugh. David is lucky to have a mother who's so practical, so down to earth. It's important to remember that not everyone has been blessed with financial success, and we should always be grateful for what we have. Victoria raised her champagne glass. So here's to family in all its forms, and to accepting people exactly as they are, regardless of their limitations. The applause was scattered and awkward. I could see people looking at me with a mixture of pity and secondhand embarrassment. That's when I stood up. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "Could I borrow that microphone for just a moment?" Victoria's smile faltered. "Oh, Margaret, that's really not necessary." "I think it is," I said, walking toward the front of the room. "After such a lovely speech about family and financial circumstances, I think everyone deserves to hear the complete story." Victoria reluctantly handed me the microphone, and I could see panic starting to creep into her eyes. I looked out at the 200 guests, Victoria's family, their business associates, their friends, and the handful of people from David's side who had been deemed appropriate for the guest list. "Thank you, Victoria, for that lovely speech about accepting people regardless of their limitations," I began, my voice steady and clear. "I think it's wonderful that you've shared your thoughts about family financial circumstances with everyone here tonight." I paused, letting the tension build. Since we're discussing family finances so openly, I think it's only fair that I share some information about my own financial situation. After all, transparency is so important in family relationships. Victoria was staring at me with growing alarm. David looked confused. The guests were leaning forward, sensing drama. You see, everyone, I'm afraid Victoria has been operating under some misconceptions about my financial circumstances. It's understandable. I have been living very modestly since my husband died. But what Victoria doesn't know is that my mother was Eleanor Whitmore of the Whitmore Family Trust. I pulled out the documents Eleanor had prepared and held them up for everyone to see. These are the official documents showing that I am the sole heir to my mother's estate, valued at $45 million. The room erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. Victoria's face went white as paper. That's right, I continued, my voice rising above the noise. 45 million. I've been living modestly by choice, not necessity. I wanted to see what kind of people would come into my son's life when they thought we had nothing to offer. Victoria was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. That's impossible, she stammered. You shop at Walmart. I shop at Walmart because I choose to, I said, turning to face her directly. You married my son because you thought you had to. The room was dead silent now. Everyone was staring at Victoria, whose carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time. But that's not even the most interesting part of tonight's revelations, I continued, pulling out another set of documents. You see, while Victoria has been so concerned about my financial limitations, I've been learning some fascinating things about her family's financial situation. Victoria's father, James, started to stand up, but I held up my hand. Please, sit down, James. I think everyone here deserves to know exactly what kind of financial stability they're celebrating tonight. And that's when I dropped the nuclear bomb that would destroy the Sterling family forever. According to the financial investigation I commissioned, I said, holding up the private investigator's report, the Sterling family currently owes $2.3 million to various creditors. James Sterling's company is 3 months from bankruptcy, and this beautiful estate we're celebrating in tonight, it's 6 months behind on mortgage payments. The wedding guests were in complete shock. You could hear a pin drop in that massive reception hall. James Sterling shot to his feet. This is outrageous. You can't come into our home and... Your home, I interrupted. You mean the home that's being foreclosed on next month? The home you've mortgaged 3 times to cover your business debts. I turned back to address the room full of business associates and society friends. Victoria has been telling everyone that her family is wealthy and generous. But the truth is, they're broke. This entire wedding is being paid for with borrowed money that they can't afford to repay. The job offer they made to my son, the company won't exist in 6 months. Victoria finally found her voice. Stop it! You're lying. You're just a bitter old woman who can't stand that your son found someone better than you. Someone better? I asked, pulling out another document. You mean someone who's been having an affair with the wedding planner for the past 3 months? The room erupted in shocked gasps and whispers. Marcus Rivera, the wedding planner, went pale and started backing toward the exit. That's right, I continued, showing the photos and credit card receipts. While Victoria has been planning this beautiful wedding to my son, she's been meeting Marcus at the Marriott downtown twice a week. I have photos, receipts, and text messages documenting their relationship. Victoria was now visibly shaking. That's not... I never... David, you have to believe me. But David was staring at her with a look of complete betrayal and disgust. Is it true? He asked quietly. Before Victoria could answer, I delivered the final blow. There's more, I'm afraid. The FBI is currently investigating James Sterling's business for running what amounts to a Ponzi scheme. He's been using new investor money to pay off old debts. Some of you in this room tonight may actually be victims of that scheme. Several of the business associates started talking urgently among themselves. A few were already reaching for their phones. James Sterling's face was now bright red with rage. You have no right to come here and destroy my family. Your family destroyed itself, I said calmly. I'm just telling the truth. The same truth you should have told my son before you made him promises you couldn't keep. That's when Victoria completely lost it. Please, she screamed, falling to her knees in her wedding dress. Please don't do this to us. I'll do anything. I'll leave David. I'll disappear. Just please don't ruin us. "I'm not ruining you," I said, looking down at her with no sympathy whatsoever. "You ruined yourselves the moment you decided to build your lives on lies and other people's money." David was staring at his new wife in horror. "Victoria, is all of this true?" She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. Her makeup ruined, her perfect wedding day turned into a nightmare. "David, I can explain everything. My family, we were just trying to help you. We wanted to give you a better life. By lying to me? By cheating on me? By treating my mother like garbage? I never meant. I thought she was really poor. I didn't know." "And that made it okay?" David's voice was rising now. "You thought it was okay to humiliate my mother because you thought she couldn't fight back?" Victoria had no answer for that. That's when the sirens started. I had called the FBI that morning and told them exactly where they could find James Sterling at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. Through the windows of the reception hall, we could see police cars and federal agents pulling up the circular driveway. "James Sterling?" The lead agent walked into the reception hall, showing his badge. "You're under arrest for securities fraud and operating an illegal investment scheme." As they put handcuffs on Victoria's father, she let out a wail that I swear could be heard 3 counties over. "This is all your fault!" she screamed at me. "You destroyed everything!" I walked over to where she was still kneeling on the floor in her ruined wedding dress and looked down at her. "No, Victoria. You destroyed everything the moment you chose greed over love. You could have married my son and been part of a family that would have loved and supported you no matter what. Instead, you chose to be cruel to someone you thought couldn't defend herself." I turned to address the room one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for disrupting this celebration, but I think it's important that everyone understand exactly what they were celebrating. As for the gifts you may have brought, I suggest you hold on to your receipts." I walked over to David, who was standing in shock, watching his new wife sobbing on the floor. "Son, you have a choice to make. You can continue to prioritize money over family, or you can remember who you really are and what values you were raised with." "Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "Sorry doesn't undo betrayal, David. You chose her money over your mother's love. You uninvited me from your wedding because you were embarrassed by my appearance. That's not something you apologize for. That's something you live with." I handed him one of Eleanor's business cards. "When you're ready to have an honest conversation about family, call me. But until then, you're on your own." And with that, I walked out of the reception hall, leaving behind the wreckage of the Sterling family's lies and my son's poor judgment. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, the consequences were just getting started. 1 year later, I'm sitting in my beautiful new home, a modest but comfortable place I bought with cash, reading the morning newspaper and sipping coffee from my favorite mug. The headline in the business section makes me smile. "Sterling Investment Scandal. CEO sentenced to 12 years in federal prison." James Sterling had been convicted on 17 counts of securities fraud, money laundering, and operating an illegal Ponzi scheme, the FBI investigation revealed that he had stolen over $15 million from investors over the past 5 years. The beautiful estate where the wedding was held, seized by the federal government and sold at auction to compensate victims. But James wasn't the only Sterling family member to face consequences. Victoria had been charged as a co-conspirator in her father's scheme. Turns out, she had been actively involved in recruiting new investors by flaunting the fake wealthy lifestyle and hosting parties to lure in potential victims. She was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit fraud. The irony was delicious. Victoria, who had mocked me for shopping at Walmart, was now making license plates for 25 cents an hour in federal prison. As for David, the consequences for him were different, but just as devastating. The marriage was annulled within a week of the wedding. Hard to maintain a marriage when your wife is in federal custody and your new father-in-law is facing multiple felony charges. David had tried to call me dozens of times in those first few days, but I wasn't ready to talk to him. When I finally did take his call, 3 months after the wedding, his voice was broken. "Mom, I lost my job." "What happened?" "The scandal. It made the news. Parents at the school were uncomfortable having a teacher who was associated with the Sterling family fraud. The school board decided it was better if I resigned." I felt a pang of sympathy for him, but I kept my voice neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that. I can't find another teaching job." No one wants to hire someone connected to this mess. I'm working at a restaurant now, waiting tables." There was a long pause. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your help, but I don't know what else to do. I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my savings. I spent everything I had on the wedding rings and the honeymoon that never happened." "David," I said gently, "you didn't lose everything because of the scandal. You lost everything because you chose money over family. You chose appearances over character. You chose a woman who was cruel to your mother over the mother who raised you. I know I was wrong. I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I know I failed you in every way that matters. Yes, you did. Is there any chance at all that you could forgive me?" I was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened. My son had broken my heart, but he was still my son. "David, forgiveness isn't the question. The question is whether you've learned anything from this experience." "I have. I swear I have." "Then prove it. Don't ask me for money. Don't ask me to fix your problems. Show me that you can rebuild your life based on character instead of shortcuts. Show me that you've remembered who you really are." That conversation was 6 months ago. Since then, David has slowly been rebuilding his life. He's still waiting tables, but he's also volunteering at a literacy program, using his teaching skills to help adults learn to read. He's moved into a small apartment, drives an old car, and lives within his means. More importantly, he's never asked me for money. Not once. Last month, he called to tell me he'd been offered a teaching position at an inner-city school that needed experienced educators and was willing to look past the scandal. "The pay is terrible," he said, "but Mom, these kids need help, and I think this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm proud of you," I told him, and I meant it. Would you maybe like to have dinner sometime? Nothing fancy. Maybe just pizza at my apartment?" "I'd like that," I said. "We're taking it slow, rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time. Trust, once broken, takes time to heal. But I can see that David is becoming the man I raised him to be, not the man Victoria tried to turn him into. As for me, well, my life has changed in ways I never expected." The Sterling family scandal had consequences that reached far beyond one failed wedding. Within weeks of James Sterling's arrest, other victims started coming forward with similar stories. It turned out that the Sterlings had been running marriage cons for years. They would identify wealthy widows or successful single men, then have Victoria or one of her cousins strike up a relationship. Once they were engaged or married, the Sterling family would begin the process of isolating their marks from friends and family, gaining control of their finances, and eventually draining their accounts. I was contacted by the FBI to serve as a witness in several related cases. Agent Martinez, who had led the investigation, told me that my decision to document everything and set up the wedding confrontation had provided them with exactly the evidence they needed to build a comprehensive case. "Mrs. Chen, your investigation gave us a roadmap to track down 12 other families who had been victimized by this scheme," she said during one of our meetings. "Without your evidence, we might never have uncovered the full scope of their operation. 12 other families, 12 other people who had been manipulated, isolated, and financially destroyed by the Sterling family's greed." I met some of them during the trial proceedings. There was Robert Martinez, a 70-year-old widower who had lost his entire retirement savings to James Sterling's fake investment scheme after Victoria's cousin convinced him to trust the family with his money. There was Patricia Williams, a successful businesswoman who had been engaged to Victoria's brother until she discovered that her fiancé had been slowly draining her business accounts. Each story was heartbreaking, but what struck me most was how grateful these people were that someone had finally stopped the Sterling family's operation. "Mrs. Chen," Patricia said to me after one court session, "you saved my life. If you hadn't exposed them when you did, I would have lost everything." That's when I realized that my $45 million could do more than just provide me with a comfortable retirement. It could be a weapon for justice. I established the Whitmore Foundation for Elder Financial Abuse Prevention. The foundation provides legal assistance to elderly people who have been targeted by financial scams, funds investigations into suspected fraud, and offers education programs to help people recognize and avoid these schemes. The foundation's first major case was helping the other Sterling family victims recover what money they could and rebuild their lives. We hired teams of lawyers and forensic accountants to track down hidden assets and pursue civil claims against the Sterling family's estate. We recovered $3.2 million for the victims. Not everything they had lost, but enough to help them start over. But perhaps the most satisfying part of the foundation's work was what happened when Victoria's wedding video went viral. Someone at the wedding had recorded my speech on their phone, and within days of the arrest, the video was all over social media. Rich Widow Destroys Gold Digger at Wedding became a viral sensation, with over 20 million views across different platforms. The comments section was filled with people sharing their own stories of family betrayal and financial manipulation. Hundreds of viewers reached out to the foundation asking for help with their own situations. We started getting calls from people all over the country who were dealing with similar scams. Adult children stealing from elderly parents, new spouses isolating their partners from family and friends, investment advisors targeting widows and retirees. Each case we took on taught me something new about the SCOP, financial elder abuse in this country. And each person we helped reinforced my belief that my mother's money was being put to exactly the use she would have wanted. Your mother always said that money should be used to protect people, not just accumulate, Eleanor told me during one of our foundation planning meetings. I think she would be very proud of what you're doing. The foundation has now helped over 200 families in 3 years. We've recovered more than $15 million in stolen assets and prevented countless other scams through our education programs. But the most important transformation wasn't in the lives we saved. It was in my own life. Because somewhere in the process of helping other people fight back against the people who had hurt them, I discovered something I never expected to find. I discovered who I really was when I wasn't pretending to be poor. 3 years after that wedding, I'm a completely different person than the woman who sat in that reception hall wearing a Walmart dress and being mocked by a gold-digging daughter-in-law. I'm writing this story from my office at the Whitmore Foundation, looking out the window at a beautiful garden where we hold support group meetings for financial abuse survivors. On my desk are thank you letters from people we've helped, photos from my travels around the country, speaking at conferences about elder financial abuse, and a framed picture of my mother that reminds me every day why this work matters. They called me trailer trash. But trash doesn't leave a $45 million legacy of justice. The foundation has grown beyond anything I imagined when I first established it. We now have offices in 12 states, a staff of 35 people, and partnerships with law enforcement agencies across the country. We've helped over 500 families recover stolen assets and prevented millions of dollars in additional fraud through our education programs. But the most meaningful part of this journey has been the personal transformation. For years after Robert died, I felt invisible. I felt like my life was ending, like my purpose was finished. Hiding my wealth and playing poor had been a defensive strategy, a way to protect myself from people who might want to use me. But standing up to Victoria and her family taught me something important. Real wealth isn't what you have. It's knowing your worth and demanding that others respect it. I learned that I didn't have to hide my success to find authentic relationships. I just had to choose the right people to share it with. My chosen family now includes the staff at the foundation, the survivors we work with, and the dedicated lawyers and investigators who help us fight financial abuse. These are people who knew exactly what I was worth from day one and chose to love and respect me anyway. As for David, we're rebuilding our relationship slowly but surely. He's been teaching at that inner-city school for 2 years now, and he's found his calling working with kids who remind him that character matters more than money. We have dinner once a week, and he's never once mentioned my money or asked for financial help. Last month, he brought me a card his students had made thanking me for the literacy program the foundation funds at their school. "My mom helps people," he had written on the board, according to his note. "She taught me that helping others is what makes you rich." That's the son I raised. It just took a devastating scandal and 3 years of rebuilding for him to remember who he was. The foundation recently received a call from a woman in Florida whose story sounded remarkably familiar. Her daughter-in-law was pressuring her to sign over power of attorney, claiming it was for her own good, while simultaneously making comments about the woman's limited understanding of financial matters. Mrs. Chen, she said during our phone call, I saw your idea online, and I realized that what's happening to me is exactly what happened to you. I'm not actually poor either. I have money saved, but I've been living modestly since my husband died, and now I think my son's wife is trying to take advantage of that. What do you want to do about it? I asked. I want to fight back, but I don't know how. Well, I said, smiling as I reached for my legal pad, let me tell you exactly how we're going to handle this. Because that's what I do now. I help people fight back. I help them remember their worth. I help them understand that they don't have to accept mistreatment from family members just because they're family. To anyone watching this who's being mistreated by family members who think you're powerless, you don't have to accept it. You have more power than you know. You don't have to be a secret millionaire to demand respect. You don't have to have a trust fund to have worth. Your worth isn't measured by your bank account. It's measured by your character, your integrity, and your willingness to stand up for yourself when people try to diminish you. Victoria thought she was marrying into money, but she was actually marrying into a family that valued love over wealth. If she had treated me with kindness and respect, if she had genuinely cared about my son's happiness instead of just his supposed financial prospects, she would have been welcomed into a family with more money than she ever dreamed of. Instead, she chose cruelty, manipulation, and greed, and those choices led her exactly where they deserved to lead her. I learned that real wealth isn't what you have. It's knowing your worth and demanding others respect it. I learned that the people who truly love you will love you whether you shop at Walmart or Nordstrom. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so successful and fulfilled that your enemy's opinions become completely irrelevant. The Whitmore Foundation continues to grow, and every day I wake up knowing that my work is making a real difference in people's lives. I travel the country speaking at conferences. I've written a book about financial elder abuse that became a bestseller, and I've testified before Congress about the need for stronger protections for seniors. But the best part of my new life is the simplest. I never have to pretend to be anything other than exactly who I am. If this story inspired you to stand up for yourself or reminded you that your worth isn't measured by what other people think you can afford, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And sometimes the people who underestimate you the most are the ones who need the biggest wake-up call. Thanks for listening to my story. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love connecting with people who understand that real wealth comes from standing up for what's right. And remember, never let anyone make you feel small because they think you can't fight back. You never know who you're dealing with or what kind of surprise they might have waiting for you. If you enjoyed this story of justice and empowerment, make sure to subscribe for more incredible revenge stories where the underdog wins. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, and share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that standing up for yourself is always worth it. Your support means everything to me, and I can't wait to share more stories of people who refused to be victims and chose to be victors instead. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to deal with someone who underestimated you? How did you handle it? I read every comment and love hearing your stories. Until next time, remember, you're worth more than anyone who tries to diminish you realizes, including yourself.